Well, welcome everyone to episode 2. Yeah, we've made it this far. And this is episode 2 of Yorkshire Gamer's Reet Big Wargames podcast. And those of you who are observant will know or notice that there's been a little change in the name, and we've gone from Yorkshire Gamer's Reet Big Toy Soldier Adventures to Yorkshire Gamer's Reet Big Wargames podcast. And I just had a little bit of think after the first episode, and go around sort of like web searches and that sort of thing just to include war games in the podcast title. So that's why we've done that. Just in case you noticed, you probably didn't, to be honest, but there we go. So I just wanted to, before we go into the interview, just do a bit of housekeeping with you and go through a couple of bits and pieces like the name change. So I'd like to mention a big thank you to all you listeners out there for the reception that this podcast has got. The pilot episode that is now on both Podbean and the audio podcast and also on YouTube is now over 500 listens, which is massively more than I expected. And episode 1, the brilliant episode, if I may say so, with Chris and Gareth talking about Wars of the Roses and all things big gaming. That will go up onto YouTube today, and I'm hoping that it's up about 200 downloads on the podcast, and I'm hoping it'll creep up and go past the pilot episode when it gets released on the YouTube. So thank you very much. Lots of positive comments, which is great, and look forward to getting some more from today's episode. Still plan at this stage to do 5 episodes and see where we are, see whether it's worth carrying on. The reception from the first couple of releases is tipping me very much more towards continuing to do this, and so please like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you can just to make me aware that there's an audience for this out there, because although I am talking to myself in my living room at the moment, I don't want to be talking to myself in the internet ether world, etc. So if those 5 episodes go well, I'll probably make an announcement at the end of the 4th episode, because I'll definitely know by then, and we'll see where we go. I've thought about guests going forward, and I've got a nice big long list, so it's looking positive, looking positive. In other things, Yorkshire Gamer, I'm not going to use the podcast as a to go through my projects. I do a monthly update on YouTube that covers that. So if you're interested in all things Yorkshire Gamer and what's happening in the games room, then please bob along to the YouTube channel and catch up with the monthly updates. But in other news, I was the guest myself on Firepower Gaming, run by Andy, whose handle is at Dystad on the Twitters, and we had a lovely chat for an hour or so about all things gaming, and covered a lot of background that I can't get into me 4 minutes here. So please give Andy a follow, a like, and subscribe on his channels. And he's done lots of interviews with the likes of Alex Sutherland and Sonic Ledge. There's lots of stuff, Tom Egan as well. Lots of stuff on there that's worth a listen. So please bob over there and give him some support. So that's the intro, and it's time to move on to the main area of the podcast and the interview with our guest. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 2 of Yorkshire Gamer's Big Game Podcast. And we're into the interview stage now, which is going to be very similar to episode 1. And today's guest is an old friend of mine, Richard Harris. And Richard was already a member at Leeds Wargames Club when I walked in through the doors of its then home in Armley in the late 80s as a fresh-faced 18-year-old. And Richard is very definitely a big gamer, and is a familiar face to many people in the Wargames show circuit, putting on big games for many years. And that's what we like here. We're all about the big game. And he now runs a company called Legendary Wargames. It runs weekend big games in an absolutely brilliant custom-built building. So welcome, Richard.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So, have you done any? You've done your homework? Did you listen to episode 1?
I have indeed. Yes, congratulations.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great 90 minutes.
Well, I'm sure we could top it today, mate. I'm sure we could just go for one better. So,
well, let's see.
The first thing that I like that we're going to do is I'm just going to ask you to just go through your sort of introduction to wargaming, if you like, and
yes.
Rather than you going on for hours about it, I'm going to give you 4 minutes. So
absolutely,
yeah, we don't. So have you had a practice? Have you got your 4 minutes down?
No. This is just off the cuff, and
right.
I'll be as brief as possible.
No worries, mate. Well, when you hear the countdown music start, you've got 30 seconds left. All right. So in your own time, Richard, starting now.
Well, yeah, I got into wargaming really through my dad. He used to build FX kits for me, and then I think similar to yourself, you'd go off at a weekend and spend some money on some figures, and then just play with dice and sticks or whatever. And then a chap he knew at work who painted miniatures but didn't play bought himself a little book, General Rules for Wargaming, gave it to my dad. And from that moment, I suppose I was probably about 13 years old, I had a book with some very simple wargame rules in. So started with that. Then went to high school. At high school, we had a Wargames club. There was a sixth form student there called Peter Romanick, who was a member of Leeds Wargames Club. So not only just playing at the Wargames Club at school, I got introduced to Leeds Wargames Club as a 13-year-old. That was a bit of an eye-opener for me, seeing so many different scales, figures, periods. But I was also introduced at that point to role-playing games in the form of Dungeons and Dragons. And I suppose I went off at that point more into role-playing than wargaming, but still kept an interest in wargaming. Started with 15mm French Army, but kind of discovered at that point that painting wasn't I wouldn't say it wasn't my forte, but I didn't have the attention span to paint large numbers of figures. So then, member of the Wargames Club, that was good. Introduction to reasonably what we were talking about, 6x4 club gaming. But they did put on slightly bigger 8x4 games or 8x6 games. And it would be about that time when Miniature Wargames came out with the fantastic photographs from the Wargames Holiday Centre. And I was mentioned in there that Peter Gilder had a Wargame Centre at Pickering in North York. And I started saving. When I got to 16, I had a part-time job. And that was in a game shop in Leeds called Games of Liverpool. I don't know whether you remember that from when you were home in Liverpool. And they had a game section downstairs, which did mainly board games and fantasy miniatures and a few historical. Through that, I managed to save up, and then at 16, my mum and dad put in half the cost so I could go to the Wargames Holiday Centre, and that's where I got into big games. So I think that sums it up slightly, really.
Well, that's not too bad. You've done a reasonable bit of time in there. The music's coming in. Do we need the bing bong bit at the end, or are we? It's coming now. It's here.
Yeah, well, that'll do.
Now shut it.
A bit of Sweeney at the end there, just to tell you to shut it.
Yeah.
So, thanks for that, Richard.
Right.
We didn't mention at the start, but this is your first podcast as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is indeed.
You are a podcast virgin, the very same that Gareth was in the first episode. Yes. So we'll make it as easy as we can. We'll make it as easy as we can. So from that 4 minutes, you mentioned games in Liverpool, and did you say you worked there?
Well, they had a branch in Leeds, and I worked downstairs there. So I had a good view and access to the various board games, role-playing games. And then they started to do a few historical miniatures as well. Now, I'd been introduced to the historical side of things from the Wargames Club at Leeds.
Well, because I wasn't aware there was a games of Liverpool in Leeds. I remember the Liverpool shop. It used to be near the entrance to the tunnel, and I used to go there on the train from Cheshire, where I was living at the time. And downstairs there, they had I think they had Heroics and Ross miniatures and some 15mm stuff kicking around.
Yes.
So it's the same shop.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
excellent.
Right. Yeah.
So when you went to the Wargames Holiday Centre, then that was 16 years old.
Yes.
And was that part of like an organised trip from the Leeds Wargames Club, or?
No. This was myself just going on the first ever holiday I'd ever been on by myself without my parents. So we met in a. Honestly, I can say that of anything that's ever influenced me in wargaming was walking into the Wargames Holiday Centre. It was then based at Folkestone, which is a village just outside, sort of midway between Filey and Scarborough.
Yeah.
And that's when I met sort of players from all over the country who'd gathered there to wargame, and we spent a whole week wargaming.
Wow, a whole week.
A whole week, yeah.
Oh, that's proper gaming, that is.
Oh, yeah, but it broke up nicely because we started with a Napoleonic. I think we then moved on to a World War II. We then went down the Nile in the Sudan.
Yeah.
And then we had a choice then of what we finished with, and we finished off then with a bigger Napoleonic.
So for those people who haven't or didn't go there, and the newer people to wargaming, just describe that huge shed in the back of the garden in Scarborough to people.
Yeah, it just absolutely mind blowing to open the door into effectively what was probably about 30-foot long structure, maybe 20-foot wide. Well, more than that, possibly 30-foot wide, maybe 40-foot long. His tables were 27-foot long. Now there were 3 foot, then 6 foot, then 6 foot, with a 3-foot gap in between. And then the whole of two sides of the building completely shelved with thousands and thousands and thousands of figures from different periods. And it, when you've only seen a 6x4, it was just stunning. Absolutely stunning.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Have you any idea how many figures were there? I just remember seeing, like you say, rows and rows and rows of trays that went on forever.
Blimey, I would have thought altogether there would have been a couple of 100,000 figures all told in everything. I mean, I don't know exactly how many there was, but it was certainly very, very big. Probably a couple of 100,000, maybe too many.
Well, to be honest, that wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if you remember, I did a bit of painting for them a long, long time ago.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I remember going up there and taking like 4 battalions of French, 36 figure, 28 mil battalions up there. And on my tray that I'd carried up lovingly in the car, it looked like a massive amount of stuff. And then they just put it in this tray and slid it back into the unit, and it just disappeared into into this massive amount of stuff. It was it was gobsmacked. I'd like to try and find some photographs of that place, just to show people what it was like. I'm sure if I dig around on the internet, I won't find it. I won't find it.
You should do, yeah. So I was looking through. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, who was running it when you first went? Then was it Peter Gilder himself?
It was Peter Gilder himself, yes. And he ran it for a few years until he got ill, and he sold it to a lovely chap called Mike Ingham.
Yep.
Mike did come on one of the weekends we were doing, so I got to meet him personally. And then we had one thing in common, which we were both Mad Keen Leeds United fans.
Ah, right, okay.
So he took over and he ran it, and then went into partnership with Jerry Elliott. Jerry came into it, and then they ran it together. And then unfortunately Mike got unwell and he died. And I think Jerry decided at that point that was his time to end. And he sold it to Mark Freeth, who now runs it down in Birmingham. Basingstoke.
Yeah, I've been in contact with Mark, and he's going to come on the show.
Very good.
Towards the end of this sort of mini first run of 5 episodes, so that'll be good to speak and catch up with him about the history. Did he take on all the figures then?
He took the vast majority of them. Yes, I think some of the collection was sold. There were certain units that were sold to various other interested parties, but he took the vast majority of everything.
That would have needed a fairly large, heavy goods vehicle, I would suggest, to take.
Yeah. I don't know how he got it all down there, but yeah, it would have been interesting.
Well, thanks for that, and I just want to cover something that might not come up later in the episode because it doesn't really fit into any of the topics that they're going to cover, and that's a recent article that appeared in the Yorkshire Post newspaper. And for those of you listening who don't live in Yorkshire, number one, why not? Why are you living outside God's own county? Number two, Yorkshire Post is where you get all your news from. None of that national rubbish. So I was aware it was coming out, and I was quite surprised that it was covered in such detail and such prominence in the it was in the Sunday, it was in the magazine, wasn't it, on a Saturday?
Saturday magazine, yes.
Yeah. So just tell us then, how did that come about? How did that article start?
Yes, well, I received an email from Sarah who wrote the article.
Yeah.
She'd got a brother who'd wargamed and dabbled, probably with the Warhammer side of things. And she just got I don't know what triggered the actual start of all this, but she decided to do an article on the fact that people still wargame with figures, even in a digital age where you can do everything on computer. And she must have typed in wargaming Yorkshire. I'm guessing that was a search she did. Now, if you type that in as a sort of Yahoo search, we sort of sit quite highly up the top, the Legendary Wargames. And she must have looked at that and thought, that's a bit different. So she emailed me and said, could she talk? We had a quick phone call, and then she came over and interviewed me in what we call the lodge. And not long after, so told her my story, which is very similar to what we've just discussed. She then arranged for a photographer to come over who, rather surprisingly, when you think of a newspaper, started filming me. So all of a sudden, I'm on, not only am I in print, I'm on a video as well. So
very good.
There's a 2.5 minute video that they took as well, which I did notice was on YouTube. Actually, I don't know how easy it is to actually find on, but it's basically the article but on video. So she put together interviewing myself and one of our friends, Steve Shan, who's a figure painter and enthusiast. A lot of people will know. So there's a little interview by myself and Steve and a couple of other bits in there. But she's done a really positive, encouraging piece about wargaming still taking place, even in a digital age.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I particularly liked about that piece. You can be crossing into dangerous territory sometimes with journalists with wargaming, because you'll either get the big kid who never grew up toy soldier outside, or you'll get the warmongering wants to go out and shoot people with an AK-47 angle, and I think they did it very well. Have you had a lot of feedback from them? Have you had any contacts from people?
It's certainly. I posted that article. I let people know on Facebook and Twitter. It had a wonderful response on the Tabletop Gamers Network, and a lot of other networks as well thought it was a positive idea. And I have had a few people getting in touch saying they liked it and they're a little, it sparked a bit of interest.
Yeah, that's really positive and really good for the hobby. I'm really happy with that. It was initially behind a paywall. I think it's free to view now, is it?
Oh, is it free to view now? Yeah, it was. You could basically register for free and get what they call their premium article, and you'd be able to look at that one article. The only problem with that is you are registering with the paper, and then you start to get a lot of email.
Yeah.
So it's gone where you can just click on and look at it.
Yeah, I think if you search, if you search for it, I think you can find it free to air now. So that's quite good. Yeah. Right. Well, thanks very much, Richard. And I do recommend to people, if you do get the opportunity to have a look around the internet, and hopefully you'll be able to find that Yorkshire Post article and have a read of it. It's well worth it. Another thing I like to speak to people about initially is what I call the Venn diagram of wargaming. Do you remember Venn diagrams from school?
fake memory in there. That's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago. Well, I like to think that people break down into like three sections. They're like a painter, a collector, and a wargamer. And personally, I do mostly painting and collecting, and probably less wargaming. I think you suggested earlier on that painting really wasn't your thing. So would you say you were more of a gamer?
Yes, I'm more into gaming than collecting, and I do dabble with painting. Once I get stuck into something, but sitting down and painting vast amounts of figures, I tend to get distracted far too easily.
Yes, that's easily done.
Yes.
So obviously, when we talk about Legendary Wargames later on, there's lots of figures to play with there. Are they being painted by other people for you, or are they like a collective? Where do all the figures come from?
Well, we when we are building collections, we ask Steve Shan to paint for us, and he's done a big chunk of our collection. But then there are a couple of other painters as well, which have been very helpful. Richard Croysdale, and Jerry Miller.
Oh, right, Jerry. Yep, I know Jerry.
Yeah, I knew you would. Yes, he's well known. And they're all, and of course, they're all part of our wargaming group. So I've been very, very lucky, and very, very well supported. And I think at this point I should mention as well, of course, that Legendary Wargames isn't just myself. There is Andrew Lawson, who also helps, and he's part of the team here at Legendary Wargames. We're the sort of partners in it.
Okay, so what's the current project? What's the current thing that you're building at the moment?
Currently, I'm doing work around the lodge itself, but in the lodge, I'm adding to the terrain that we got from TM Terrain. Now, I know we mentioned that in the first podcast. David Marshall at TM Terrain made all our boards for us because we wanted, obviously, to provide a really high quality product for people to come and play on. So he made us a desert terrain so we could use it for the Sudan, and we had to way of adapting it to use for any other terrain we wanted. So that's what we've done effectively. We've found by using some railway scatter over the top of the terrain, it creates a fantastic effect. So I'm just currently adding to some ridges that he made so we can make a Pratzen Heights to Reef Battle of Austerlitz.
So is that the guy who did the Agincourt?
That's right.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Yes. There are photographs on our Facebook page. I think I've put some on Twitter as well, and the web page itself. And you can see the terrain in its desert form and in its Northwest Europe form, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
So just before we finish,
it's all the same terrain.
So just before we finish this little section, then, where can people find you on the internet? Whereabouts are you, and what names are you under?
So legendarywargames.com will get the website. At Legendary Wargames on Twitter. And if you search Legendary Wargames on Facebook, you'll find us there as well.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, we're just going to take a little break now. We're going to come back in a second and talk about big games. Okay, so welcome back, and the Big Game podcast is about big games. And that's why Richard's here. It does what it says on the tin. That's the best way to look at it. And so we've discussed with a number of people, and I've tried to define myself what a big game is. What does a big game mean to you? What's the crux of a big game?
Well, a big game for myself is a game that you wouldn't normally do with your at your club. Now, clubs can put on big games, and they are normally multiplayer affairs. Now, anyone could play a big game themselves, but my experience of big games starts obviously with the Wargames Holiday Centre, where we have multiple player games on a large table. Now, obviously, I like to think of a big game as something we do as sort of a special occasion. It's not your everyday game. But obviously we are spoilt somewhat by always having large tables. So when we play, we can do multiplayer games with at least each person commanding what he would normally command, but all together in one battle. So, so you have control of your part of the battle, but not the whole part of the battle. So you can quite happily, I think, as you pointed out with your Jutland replay, you had command of one part of the fleet, but you were in no way control of what was happening elsewhere on the table.
So that gave me a sense of the size of the battle, because the bit that you're controlling, you're so concentrating on what's going on that you're kind of aware of this stuff at the other end of the table, but not to any great detail. So at the Wargames Holiday Centre, then, how many people would be involved in that, and how many figures would you control? What sort of size of a unit?
When I was visiting the centre, you would have up to 12 people, and under your direct command, you might have anything between 700 or 800 figures to, probably around that sort of scale. You could have smaller games where you might only have 4, but I mean, this obviously to a lot of people will sound huge, but 10 battalions of French is 360 figures. So that to many people is an enormous game. But when you were fighting at the Wargames Holiday Centre, you might have 12 players each, which then becomes a very big game. It's a similar thing that we're trying to do here at Legendary Wargames. Myself and my partner Andy are influenced by what we experienced ourselves at the Wargames Holiday Centre. So we like to be able to give people a big game, lots of figures each, posing different problems and different experiences to them. Now, the other thing I'd like to say on what became the Leeds Wargames Club's big game was when we used to go, and we used to go twice a year. We'd go in the early part of the year and the late part of the year, and it would be a social occasion where club members could gather together for a weekend, have a good time, play a game, eat together, go out to the pub, have a few drinks. Some people went to the theatre, and then gather together for another day two, and that would be a big game, but it would also be a great social occasion for the club.
So, as well as the Holiday Centre, there was you used to put big games on at shows as well, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. Well, we still do. We still like to put on a decent size game. So we quite often we play at Partisan, Fiasco. We always put a big game on as part of Leeds Wargames Club, and we have a group of friends which we call Bramley Barn. So that's centred around Chris Flowers' barn, in North Yorkshire, and the fact that some of us come from Bramley and Leeds, so we came up with the name Bramley Barn. So,
yeah, I mean that took ages to come up with. We still like to put on big games. It's as you said, to go to a show and see a big game with lots of figures looking really nice is a pleasant thing to do, and you're sort of drawn to it. You want to take photographs of it, and it inspires you to go out and buy figures and recreate that to the best of your ability. Yeah. Do you think the opportunity for those big games at shows has dropped off a bit? I'm thinking a lot about there used to be quite a few 2-day shows like triples that would accommodate a big game better than a single day. Has that made a difference to where you go and what you show?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's where I first met Chris Flowers, when he was playing with the Sods Wargamers from Birmingham, and they would always do a really big Napoleonic battle over a weekend at triples or really any show they could get to where they could do it. It's just it just looks so spectacular, and I think that is what has always drawn me. So a big game for me is a big spectacular game with lovely figures on a lovely terrain, multiple players, and recreating big historical battles. And for those people who can't recreate that, which, to be fair, I'm 55 years old, and it's taken me a great deal of those years to get to a point where I can now offer that experience to people who can't. Now, my experience of really big games like that was going to the Wargames Holiday Centre, and it would only be twice a year.
Yeah.
And then I think we did Leipzig at Leeds Games Club 1 year.
Yeah, I remember that.
I think you were part of that.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you think that the definition of a big game has started to change over the years? When I'm same age as you, and I think of a big game as you do, but yes, some of the people who have been in game less time than us, they're not exposed to that anymore, and they think of a big game in a different way.
No. Yes, yeah. Well, a big game to different people will be anything bigger than they would normally play on a club night. That's how I would see it. And of course, I would say that scale necessarily doesn't affect a big game. A big game is something that requires a bit of preparation and is a little bit out of the ordinary for people. So you can play a club game with a little bit more, but a big game would be just that. It would be something that requires a little bit more time and effort to put together.
I think
so. It shows we see fewer of them, I think.
Yeah, I think when I was doing the pilot episode, I was saying that here in my house I've got a 12x6 table, and I don't particularly consider that to be a large game. And I think you probably agree with me that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a big. It's probably
Yeah, well,
bigger than average people have in their houses, but I don't think 12 by 6,000 28 mil figures is a big game.
no, that's right. We all have a different definition depending on what you're playing and what you can fit in to your own personal circumstances. So a lot of people will just have a dining table with a board on top of it, or a spare bedroom with as big a table as it can fit in the spare bedroom. It took me a long time to get bigger than that myself.
Yeah.
But once I did, we found that we did start off by playing lots of games on. I had an 18-foot table when I lived in Bramley.
Yeah.
And you came down and played there a couple of times.
Yeah.
But we actually found that a lot of the games we did just on a night that weren't carrying on were shrinking to a 10-foot or 12-foot bit of the board. Because it's easier to run that with a smaller number of people.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
So a big. So yeah. So a big game is just that. It's something which is bigger than you'd normally do, and effort to put it on, and become a. And I like to think of a big game as a social event as well.
Yeah.
Where you've got lots of people playing.
So when
it's one thing that I like about the war. Yeah, well, I was just saying it's one thing I like about the idea of what we're doing at Legendary Wargames and the Wargames Holiday Centre is that you are pulling together groups of people who necessarily won't be playing all the time every week. And you then get this lovely social interaction and you meet gamers from other parts of the country.
So when you look back on all the big games that you've played, what sticks out in your memory as some of the best and the biggest? What would you look back and think, oh, that was a cracking game?
Oh, golly. Yeah, well, there's been a few, but definitely fighting Leipzig at the Wargames Holiday Centre. Waterloo, we've had some cracking times there, some cracking weekends there. Waterloo, Borodino, say Leipzig, a couple of World War II games ourselves there, using rapid fire. When Jerry was doing it, we just turned up there as a club and fought a couple of games there, and we had some good games there. So, yeah, I have a lot of fond memories, lots and lots of fond memories of.
So Waterloo. Then I've seen
real tales to tell.
Yeah. you look on. Some people do Waterloo on a 6x4 table. These are on the, what did you say, 27-foot at Wargames Holiday Centre?
We 27 foot long and 15 foot wide, but obviously you had a foot by 27 and then 2 6 foot by 27, so you could get round the whole table and the whole board. And we did Waterloo at Church Fenton Village Hall.
Yeah,
when Andy lived over in Church Fenton, and it was on a 24-foot table.
Yeah.
So that was another cracking game.
And what sort of figures would you have on the table for that?
Golly, I would have thought probably something in the region of 200. Let me think. Maybe 160 battalions with at least an average, say, of 36 figures a battalion.
So,
And then the cavalry, artillery, and skirmishers on top.
that's a big. That's going to be a big.
Um,
I'm just gonna have to get my calculator. So that how many was that? 160 battalions at 36
well,
figures.
we're looking at, yeah, it would be between, I would say, somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 figures.
Yeah,
on the table.
That infantry was 6,000 figures. So they were talking really big numbers, and those people who haven't seen any figures from the Wargames Holiday Centre, they're not knocked up in 5 minutes, are they? They are proper masterpieces.
Oh, a lot of the collections. I mean, we do like to present nice figures, nice terrain. And it was mentioned, wasn't it, on your last podcast, that terrain is just as important for a game to look good as the figures are.
Without a doubt. I think you summed it up nicely not so long ago when you said the whole package is what a big game is. The terrain, the figures,
yes.
the social aspect of it, all of it together. If you've not got one aspect of that that's working, then it can become a bad big game, if you like. And a lot of the people who've been sort of negative towards big games have probably had a bad experience rather than a good one that we both seem to have had.
I suspect that could be the case. Yes, that could be the case. And the unachievability of an individual person to do such a game can be attained by joining a club or by spending a weekend at a Wargames Centre, refighting one of those games and getting the experience of that. And you know, we're all different, aren't we? Some of us will like it, and some of us will actually prefer a more intimate game.
I think, and that's a very good point. In that I've kind of been saying all along that people just they don't seem to want to aspire to go big. It seems to be they see something and it's a huge game with thousands of figures, and they just give up at that point and go, I can't do that.
Yes.
Rather than, like you say, get themselves involved through other ways. Well, that's brilliant.
There is always a way.
That's brilliant, Richard. I think we've had a good chat around big games, and you've brought some new ideas in there that I like some of those very much. And we're just going to take a very quick break now, and we're going to come back. And are you ready for the Yorkshire Gamer quiz?
Oh yes, I am. I feel it. I'm starting with somewhat of a disadvantage here.
We'll cover that. We'll cover that at the end of the questions, mate. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a second. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're back, and it's that part that the guests always dread. It's the How Yorkshire Gamer Are You test. And Richard, you are from Yorkshire, so you should have a decent chance with this.
I am.
But I think we may have an issue with football teams later on. We'll come to that when we get there. So are you ready to go?
Off we go.
So, go big or go home?
Oh, go big.
Contrast paints, great or a gimmick?
I'd say great.
And Winsor & Newton paintbrushes or Yorkshire-made Pro Art?
Coming from Yorkshire, it's got to be Yorkshire Pro Art.
It skipped to made, mate. It's brilliant. 96 figures, an army or a pike block?
Oh, pike block.
6x4 table, big or small game?
Oh, now. I would say small. I know that's
it's sort of controversial, but he's gone for small.
controversial. Yeah.
So, would you prefer a points-based army or an historical order of battle?
Oh no, definitely historical. Yeah, definitely.
If you were painting, would you use a wet palette to mix your paints or an old bit of MDF?
I think it'd be MDF.
Yeah, I think the wet palette thing has passed me by. Where undercoat figures, black or white?
Black.
Would you ever run a list?
Just explain that to me.
Some people who play points-based games try and build up
Yes.
like a really killer
An
army.
from a list.
Yeah, and they call it I'm going to run a list rather than I'm going to use this force. I'm guessing it's going to be a big no.
Oh no. It's a big no, yes.
Big no. So another pike block question. Do you like your figures tightly packed or socially distanced?
Tightly packed.
Excellent. Would you prefer to do a 2-hour club game or a weekend monster game?
Oh, weekend monster game, I think.
Excellent. Competition game or campaign game?
Campaign game.
Round dice, allowed or banned?
Banned.
Banned. Brilliant. This is the funny one. This is no. We're not up to the football one yet. We're up to the. Would you pay 33 pence for a communist?
Would I pay 33 pence for a communist?
Yes.
No, I wouldn't.
No. Good. I'll tell you your story when we finish.
Right.
Do you love a good table of figures and a set of rules?
Do I love a good good table
in a set of rules, like a casualty table or something like that?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Yeah. Some people find that too difficult to deal with these days. 28 millimeter is king. Yes or no?
Oh yes. Yes.
Would you allow unpainted miniatures on the table in a game?
No.
Excellent. This is the Bradford City or Leeds United?
Oh, let me think. In Bielsa we trust.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Leeds United.
For those of you listening who don't know, I am a Bradford City season ticket holder, and Richard is a Leeds United City season ticket holder. So there we go. A nice easy one here. Yorkshire or the other place over the hill?
Yorkshire.
Of course. And then finally, GW, are they the work of the devil? Ooh.
Now, from a historical, you remember I said I worked at Games of Liverpool.
Yeah.
Games Workshop. They have their place in the hobby, definitely, but they were a very aggressive company, so I think they have the devil in them.
Oh, excellent. Well, I don't need to do a lot. I don't need to do a lot of adding up there, Richard, because you are the current winner. You are 90% Yorkshire Gamer. So congratulations. If you only supported a decent football club, you'd be 95%. So yeah. Just for the listeners, the would you pay 33 pence for a communist question comes from a long time ago when I was doing a display game from the rescuing of the prisoners from Son Tay during the Vietnam War, and we were at Triples, and the guy from SHQ, because loads of people had bought loads of his figures based on our game, he offered us a really good deal on his figures. and I think it was it worked out as 33p for a VC figure. To which I said, I'm not paying 33 pence for a communist. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's where that comes from, and that's no doubt going to get me into trouble as well.
Lovely.
So I'll just take a very quick break, and then while Richard recovers, and then we're going to talk about Legendary Wargames. Okay, everyone. Hopefully you've recovered from the Yorkshire Gamer quiz. Congratulations to Richard for taking the leaderboard. Gareth Lane was on 75% and Chris Breeze on 60%. But Gareth, bless him, is from Wales, so I can see why he dropped 15% there quite easily. He didn't even know which was closer, Leeds or Bradford to Wales. So we'll have to let him off. So I've asked you to come on the podcast, other than your big experience with the big games in the Holiday Centre, to talk about Legendary Games. Now, just for everyone out there, just tell people what Legendary Games is and how it started.
Well, Legendary Wargames started. I say from my visits to the Wargames Holiday Centre, and I'd always to recreate something similar. And then when the Wargames Holiday Centre moved down Basingstoke, I thought there might be an opportunity to offer something up north, as it were. But there was only myself. I started to make a few plans, and then a very good friend of mine, of ours, Andy Lawson, he decided he wanted to come as a partner, and we started to make a few bigger plans. But again, it was slowly. Very luckily, we have always played up with Chris Flowers in North Yorkshire, and he came on board by allowing us to use his figure collections, which really gave us a brilliant start to get the Legendary Wargames going. We did a few weekends when Andy lived in Church Fenton in the village hall there, but due to circumstance, Andy ended up moving down to Doncaster, and we needed somewhere to run Legendary Wargames. So we moved now from where I lived in Bramley out to the far side, so between Thornton and Willesden, and I found an old farmhouse, and it had enough land for me to put up a large cabin where we can run the centre from. No sooner as we'd got the cabin up and we'd done a few games, COVID decided to present itself. Which has been as to all of us, it's put a real crimp on wargaming. It's also had a time-consuming effect for myself working in the Leeds Teaching Hospitals Trust. So I have been rather busy.
Yeah, I can imagine, mate. I can imagine.
So Legendary Wargames, we've got it to a stage now where we can now offer weekends, and that's what we're planning as soon as we get going again. As soon as we can get people up here, we can offer weekend big games for people to come up and give it a bash.
So just your current location then, Richard, I think you'd be closer to Valley Parade there, won't you, than Ellen Road?
That's very true. Yes.
Not going to swap allegiance then.
No. I've had a season ticket for Leeds United for over 30 years, so
it's not going to change. So just describe your current venue to us then. The lodge. What does it look like? How big is it?
Well, we've got a 20-foot by 30-foot cabin. We've got a very different way of, rather than just having two great big tables, we have six 6-foot by 6-foot tables, which then can be bridged with the 3-foot by 3-foot boards to give either 3 15-foot tables, 2 24-foot tables, a U-shape, a complete circle with a gap in the middle. It gives us so much flexibility to play virtually anything we would want to play, or any setup of terrain. All the terrain boards are modular, so they fit together in any way that we want to put them. And then we've got we've got a very diverse and unique way of making the terrain fit together and move it around.
And is it? I mean, I've seen pictures, and I'll if you don't have any issues, I'll put some pictures up around. It looks absolutely superb. And did you do most of that, or who did all the work? I seem to remember. Remember somebody digging holes at one stage.
Yes, a fair amount of that. Yes, it was put in an enclosure. We basically had an enclosure to the side of the property, and it was on a slope. Now I decided to level it out and dig it out. I have to say that it was a lengthy process. Myself and two friends, Andy and Richard Croysdale, gave me a lot of help, and we, with pick and shovel, removed the earth to make a nice area. It did involve removing some tree stumps. I managed to herniate myself while doing helping a tree stump grinder guy come in. So I ended up having. But it's been a tale of hardship and pain for getting it ready. And then we found a fantastic company down in Wiltshire called Shedbox, who came and erected in a day the cabin. And we then put about fitting it out ourselves. We got an electrician to do the electrics.
Yeah.
We built the Wargames tables and did pretty much all the work inside that we could do to get it to the state where it is now.
So what sort of periods have you got available? What games can people do when they come along?
Well, we've got from smaller games, which if people would want to do a weekend where they were playing different games over the weekend. So we cover everything really, from Wild West gunfights to gangster shootouts, World War I aircraft dogfights. But then we get to the sort of meat and drink periods. We've got a lovely Sudan period, sailing down the Nile and rescuing Gordon from Khartoum, and then we've got Napoleonics, American Civil War, World War II, post-war, modern, up to about 1970. From very post-war, from 1946 right the way up to 1970. We then do Hail Caesar, around the Roman, sort of late Roman time. We do an Arthur campaign based on Arthur being a late Roman, based in the late Roman period.
Yeah.
We do a Border Reivers campaign, which went down very well when we did that a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So really, we cover as many different periods as we can. But the meat and drink really are the Napoleonics, World War II, American Civil War. They seem to be the most popular periods that we get requested.
So what sort
I
of?
am working on a.
Sorry,
go on.
Yeah, what sort of what would if we're talking to people who like earlier on may not have experienced a big game? You've got a damn big table there. Are you putting?
Yes.
Are you putting a damn big amount of figures on that table for these big Napoleonic games and ACW games?
Yeah, what we tried. Well, obviously, we structure the size of the game to the number of people we've got coming. Yeah. But if a large number of people come, then you are looking at 7,000 figures for a big Napoleonic battle. We've done some World War II games with, a good few hundred vehicles and figures to match. And we make sure that it looks impressive and is a good play for everybody that comes. Everybody gets a good game with a good amount of figures. And then the Sudan game, everybody can be on the same side.
Yeah.
And that, as you can imagine, the podium effect.
Yeah. So I think
if anyone remembers that.
There was a little bit of a problem with the audio there. I think you said 7,000 figures. Was that right, Richard?
If you were refighting Waterloo, then you would be doing the refight that we did. So you would be upward of 6,000 and 7,000 figures on a 23, 24 foot table by 12. Yeah, so a good size.
One of the things that often comes up when people talk about big games is they talk about rule sets. So what are the rule sets that you use at Legendary Wargames?
Right. Well, we are still using Grand Manor to do the Napoleonics, mainly because we find them such an easy set of rules to use for big games.
Yeah.
That's what they were designed for when Peter put them together, when Peter Gilder put them together. And we just haven't really found anything better for such big games.
Yeah.
And it provides a decent game for an entire weekend. And I know that people find them a little bit old school, but we've not really found anything better that works over a weekend. The World War II period, we use rapid fire.
Yep.
That's what we're used to, and that's what we base all our games around. We use Hail Caesar for the ancients. They seem the best set of rules again for that kind of period and scale.
Yeah.
That we've come across. The American Civil War, we've been in the process for quite some time of putting together Peter Gilder's American Civil War rules but changing the format slightly, so they work more in an American Civil War period. So we and from Peter, different sets of American Civil War rules, including Fire and Fury. They say they are a very good set of rules that we're putting together. and we hope to have them commercially available at some point. And they're called Grand Skedaddle.
I was going to ask you about that because I remember last time we spoke, which was a number of years ago, that you were talking about getting those out and about. I think I came to Chris's and played a game with them.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're still not out yet. Still a work in progress.
No. Yeah, still a work. Well, things have shall we say things have overtaken that with the getting the cabin built. The various changes in our circumstances.
Yeah, understandable, mate. Understandable. How do people find? How do people find things like Grand Manor when they come along and they've not played them before?
They find that once they've played a few turns, they can get into it. If you've got any idea of Napoleonic units and tactics, you should have some idea of what the different units do or what they're used for. So we always make sure that there's myself and Andy umpiring and helping out, and there's always one umpire in the room at all times. So that helps because we can help. We're prepared to help people, and if you've not played before, then you need a helping hand.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. And if people are going to come along I'm sure lots of the people who do come have got previous experience with Grand Manor, but there's nothing putting off new gamers coming, and you're going to help them through and play the games.
Absolutely not.
Brilliant.
No, absolutely not. No. We'd be there and give as much help as needed. We want people to come and enjoy it. And we've had a few requests from people who want to bring their own collections and rules, and I think this comes down to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, is that you've got the figures and you've got the rules, but you've nowhere to play. We can offer our premises and a fully catered weekend, and you can come and enjoy that, and we'll give you the space to do it.
So come the end of COVID, which is looking closer than it has done in a long time. Have you planned? Have you planned a schedule? Have you planned an opening day? What's coming up?
Well, what we'll do is, I think, because of the COVID restrictions, we need to make sure that is definitely, hospitality venues are going to have to wait until we have a definite date. Now, we've got this date in June, but I think what we'll do is we'll leave it probably till August, just to let everything settle down. If there are smaller groups, of 6 or whatever, that we may consider that putting smaller games on for them. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how that goes. We have got a sort of itinerary. We certainly know that Borodino is going to be the first game we do. Now, that was a game we had planned last year or the year before? Oh, golly, Jerry Miller's birthday, and he wanted, he'd asked if he could come and do Borodino. And what we did is we said, right, come on, we'll run it as a birthday game for Jerry and friends and some of the Bramley Barn guys. But then we'll run it as a Legendary Wargames weekend immediately after that. So we're pretty certain that Borodino will be the first game we do. And moving on from that, we've got a Sudan game using both our collections and the collections of Dave Doherty.
Oh yeah, I know Dave. I know Dave.
You know Dave?
I know Dave from the Painting Analog Hobbies Painting Challenge.
Yes. Well, he's got a fantastic Sudan collection, and we were going to put both our collections together and run a weekend down the Nile on a grand scale.
I think
and that
got
got cancelled because of COVID.
I think Dave's got more camels than there are camels in the desert, hasn't he? He just seems to endlessly paint camels, as Dave.
Oh well. If you're going to go in the desert, you need camels.
You do. But I'd suggest an extra bit of bracing on whatever table Dave's on, because all them camels are going to be pretty weighty, and I don't know of any plastic camel manufacturers.
No. If you it can't be having 7,000 Napoleonics on the table.
No.
but I know what you mean.
I don't think. Yeah, I think he must be close to 7,000 camels. To be honest, he can't be far off. So
anyway, that's another game. Yeah. So that'll be another game that will be very high on the list of games to do as soon as we can get cracking. And then, as I say, towards the end of the year, I'd like to do Austerlitz, because it's a game that we planned to do at the Wargames Holiday Centre and never actually got done. So I'd like to get that one done. And then for all the World War II aficionados, we'll run a World War II game as well. And I think that's a decent mix of games to get cracking with.
To start the year, So if somebody's coming in from outside and they want to book a weekend, what would the typical itinerary be? When would you turn up? Where would you stay? What would you eat? That sort of thing.
We've got an Ibis hotel in Shipley, which is right on the doorstep of Saltaire.
Yep.
So we use that. It's got a decent number of eateries and hostelries within a short walk. A weekend would start Saturday morning. You'd fight all day till 5 o'clock, or whenever. If you want to finish a bit earlier or a little bit later, we can do that. And then back the following morning and fight on then into the afternoon, normally finishing 3-4 o'clock, but some people like to finish a little bit earlier if they've got a distance to travel. We have some people who come and stay on Friday night, and then they can then get cracking earlier on Saturday morning if that's what they want.
Do you find
we're happy to sort of negotiate with people if they want to do longer weekends and want to spend an extra day. That's absolutely fine, as long as we get enough notice. Or if someone wanted to come and just do a day, we could do that also.
And do you find that
just do a big day?
Yeah. Do you find that it's mostly groups of friends who book together, or is it individuals or small groups meeting up and gaming with people they don't really know?
From our experience so far, it is groups of people who tend to want to come and do this together. Now, it might be clubs, who play regularly together, who want that social thing, or it might be groups of friends who are spread all over the country that want to meet up at a specific place and time and do that. But we have had smaller, groups of 2 or 3 people who are happy to come together with 1s, 2s, 3s, and we just put a group together and, they can just get on and do it. And we've always got on and had a whale of a time when they've done it.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, that sounds nice and welcoming, that everyone can come in and just mix up with anyone, or if they've got a big group of friends, book it out and come down and have that social aspect that we spoke about very, in the start of this podcast that you had when you went to the holiday centre. What then have you got any plans for the future then? Are you planning to put any more collections in or build anything up, or to do it full time? What are your plans?
Yeah, well, as I say, we've got a Border Reivers campaign game now. That's a cross between a board game and a tabletop game.
Yeah.
I hopefully can crack on with my NAM collection, and the idea is to then run a much bigger. Now, no rules out there yet for this.
Yeah.
A bigger Vietnam game, a slightly skirmish.
Yeah.
Run at company or even battalion level, and over using the 6 foot by 6 foot tables to have a map with pinpoint. So the 6 tables would be different places on the map.
Yeah.
And you've got to, if you can kind of understand that, you could then get the varying different elements of the Vietnam War with fire bases on one table, with a fire base under siege on one table, a brown water bit on another, highway you have to keep open on another table, and it could. It's all. None of this has been cemented in.
Does Andy know? Does Andy know? That's the main thing.
All on little bits of paper. The game I've been sorting, and I've got quite a few figures for it. It's just on the growth. So anyway, we've a few bits and pieces, and then that's where we are at the minute, because we've got a lot of access to other bits of figures as well. So we can do quite a lot.
And the Vietnam stuff, Richard, is that in 28mm or 20mm?
It's 20, mainly using the SHQ figures. So they are slightly smaller. They are true 20mm.
Yeah, but they are brilliant, aren't they? They're really good figures.
Nicely as well. Yeah. Oh, yeah, they're lovely figures. Yeah, yeah. And then a mix of... but I've got a decent sort of group of stuff, bits and pieces so far. So I'm hoping probably won't be this year. By the end of next year, we'll have something we can offer.
That's brilliant. And just to finish off, then, Richard, if people want to book, is it on the website? Yeah. How do they get in contact with you?
There's a contact page on the website, or just come through the Facebook page or on Twitter. Really, any social media medium, get in touch. We can have a conversation, and hopefully we'll sort something out.
And that could be for one of the games that you've got advertised on your schedule, or the potential of them organising something themselves. You're quite open for that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we'll be as flexible as we can.
Well, that's fantastic. I always give the guests an opportunity to ask me a Wargames related question. Have you got one or not? Yeah. Go on. What do you want?
A question was going to be, when would you like to come up and have a big game with one of your collections?
Oh, well, that's the sort of question that I like. As soon as it's available, mate, it'd be lovely to get together and have a big game. I have to say. Yeah. Are you after an Italian? Are you after the Italian wars? Are you after seeing that?
Oh, it looks fantastic. So, it would be lovely to give that a bash. It really would, and it lends itself, I suspect, because Peter Gilder used to do that at the Wargames Holiday Centre.
He did. I remember pictures on the front of, I think it was one of the early Wargames Illustrated that had pictures of some of his Italian Wars gendarmes. And it's one of those images that's never left my mind.
Yeah, I've got that very picture on the wall in the cabin.
Oh, brilliant. They're fantastic fantastic period. Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Richard. It's been a joy to speak to you again.
Thank you very much.
I hope the listeners out there have got another viewpoint on big games, and speaking to somebody today who's had a lot of involvement in the big games. So thank you again, Richard.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for inviting me on.
Well, that was a lovely catch-up I had with Richard there. I've not spoken to him for a while, and I hope his love and my love for the big game came through during that interview. Little bit of apologies for the sound. I've invested in a new microphone myself, and that's improved the sound quality at my end quite considerably. However, in this particular episode we had some difficulties with internet connection, and there was a slight delay in parts, which meant we were reacting to each other with a couple of seconds delay. Hopefully that didn't spoil your enjoyment too much. I've listened back through it, and I could follow it quite easily, so I hope it doesn't spoil it for yourselves. So we are going to have a new show in 2 weeks' time. I hope to release on the 26th of March, and the guest for that podcast will be Chris Brown. Dr. Chris Brown is an expert in Scottish medieval history, and also Arnhem, the World War II paradrops around there, and I didn't quite realise how many books he'd written until I googled him. There's a lot, so if you're into Bannockburn or Scottish history, he's your man. And also for Arnhem, Chris runs a Facebook group called Spit, Stupid Projects in 28mm, so he's perfect for this podcast. And he's also running a big game event at Arnhem itself, hopefully in September, COVID permitting. So he will hopefully, recording goes well, we'll be here in 2 weeks' time. The lad can talk. I had a phone conversation with him last week, and we were on the phone for a couple of hours just chewing the fat, and it was a lovely chat with Chris, and I'm looking forward to speaking to him on the podcast soon. At the moment, audio release will be every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. I'm looking at 2 a month, and again I'll review that when I come to the 5 episodes to see what we're going to do going forward. So once this podcast is 2 weeks old and the new podcast comes out, then this podcast will appear on YouTube, accompanied by a number of pictures of Richard Harris's collection at the Wargames, Legendary Wargames, and I think it'll be worth listening to it again just to look at those photographs. So I shall see you in 2 weeks, whatever format you are on. So from Yorkshire Gamer, Civvy.